A Kremlin-backed plot has been crushed in Moldova, just days before critical elections. It reads like the script of a Cold War thriller. Hidden training camps in Serbia, Telegram groups buzzing with coded instructions, cash bribes handed out to desperate recruits. And behind it all, Russia's intelligence services, pulling the strings in yet another attempt to destabilize one of Europe's most fragile democracies. Moldova, a country of just 2.6 million people wedged between Ukraine and Romania, has found itself at the epicenter of a geopolitical storm. Long overshadowed by its larger neighbors, Moldova has now emerged as a frontline in Vladimir Putin's hybrid war against Europe. The Kremlin's network of disinformation, bribery, and covert operations has been exposed. And in an astonishing move, Moldovan authorities have struck back, arresting 74 individuals allegedly trained and funded to incite riots and sow chaos ahead of the parliamentary elections on September 28, 2025. For once, Moscow's playbook has been not just challenged, but humiliated. The story, however, begins decades earlier. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Moldova, like many former republics, was left caught between two worlds, its Soviet legacy and its European aspirations. Almost immediately, Moscow sought to retain influence. It backed separatists in the breakaway region of Transnistria, a narrow strip of land along Moldova's eastern border with Ukraine. By 1992, with Russian troops and weapons quietly supporting local militias, Transnistria had slipped beyond Chisinau's control. To this day, the region remains a self-proclaimed republic with its own flag, currency, and anthem, yet no international recognition. Moscow maintains about 1,500 troops in the territory, calling them peacekeepers, though many in Moldova see them as occupiers. Transnistria, about 12% of Moldova's landmass, has long been Russia's pressure valve, a permanent reminder that Moscow can destabilize Moldova at will. For much of the post-Soviet era, Moldovan politics reflected this east-west tug-of-war. Pro-Russian parties promised cheap gas and nostalgic ties to Moscow. Pro-European forces championed reform and eventual EU membership. Elections often swung back and forth, sometimes by narrow margins, sometimes by landslides. But in 2021, something shifted. The Pro-European Party of Action and Solidarity, PAS, led by Maya Sandu, secured a commanding parliamentary majority. Sandu, a Harvard-educated reformer, openly condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and made EU integration his central policy. The Kremlin, predictably, seethed. By 2024, Moldova had not only applied for EU membership but begun accession talks. Sandu won re-election with 55% of the vote, consolidating her mandate. Yet Moscow did not give up. Instead, it doubled down, launching covert schemes to buy influence, infiltrate media, and, if necessary, unleash violence on the streets of Chisinau. That brings us to this week's revelations. According to Moldova's Prosecutor's Office for Organized Crime and the General Police Inspectorate, the 74 arrested individuals had been recruited under the guise of a religious pilgrimage to Serbia. Instead, once they arrived, they found themselves in military-style camps, allegedly overseen by Russian instructors. There, they learned how to provoke police during demonstrations, how to handle firearms, and even how to stage arrests to mimic state brutality. The going rate, €400 per head. It may sound small compared to Moscow's billions spent elsewhere, but in a country where the average monthly wage is just €600, the promise of easy money was enough to lure dozens into the scheme. But Moldovan investigators have been watching closely. Their probe, involving over 250 raids across the country, including in prisons, turned up stockpiles of weapons, camouflage uniforms, forged passports, and encrypted communication devices. Police say the network had direct ties to political figures, including members of the pro-Russian Socialist Party, led by former President Igor Dodon. Dodon himself admitted that at least 4 of his party members were among those detained. Even more striking were the fingerprints of Ilan Shia, a fugitive oligarch living in Russia. Shia is infamous in Moldova for his role in the so-called billion-dollar bank theft of 2014, in which a staggering $1 billion, equivalent to about 12% of Moldova's GDP, vanished from the country's banking system. Though convicted, Shia fled to Moscow, where he now enjoys Russian citizenship and protection. From there, authorities allege, He has continued to bankroll protests, spread propaganda, and finance schemes to destabilize Moldova. It was Shi'ist network, investigators believe, that helped coordinate the Serbian training program. If this all sounds eerily familiar, it's because it is. The Kremlin's methods, fake parties, bribed activists, bot-driven disinformation campaigns, have been tested across Europe. In Moldova, however, the scale has been breathtaking. A 2024 intelligence report revealed that Moscow had set up a command center in Moscow, staffed by the FSB, to direct operations in Moldova. The structure resembled a pyramid, the FSB at the top, orchestrating funding and strategy, mid-level coordinators in Chisinau managing logistics, and at the bottom, a network of more than 33,000 paid activists spread across 119 territorial cells. These foot soldiers were tasked with organizing protests, recruiting voters, and amplifying Kremlin messaging on social media. Each activist reportedly received around 3,000 Romanian lei per month, about $180, while senior organizers earned more. In total, the network claimed to have reached 80,000 supporters. And then there was the digital battlefield. Moldova's Security and Intelligence Service, SIS, documented more than 440 TikTok accounts and dozens of Telegram channels spreading false narratives. That Sandu was a Western puppet, that Ukraine was losing the war, that EU membership would destroy Moldova's economy. Some of these channels masqueraded as legitimate news outlets. Others spread lurid conspiracy theories about NATO biolabs and secret deals with Brussels. At times, even religion was weaponized. Reports suggest Moscow paid as many as 500 Orthodox priests in Moldova to travel to Russia, where they were offered cash and perks in exchange for delivering pro-Kremlin sermons back home. It was influence warfare, cheap, adaptable, and insidious. And yet, despite all of this, Moldova's institutions have held. Sandu's government has not been toppled. EU negotiations are moving forward. The recent arrests mark not only a tactical success but a symbolic one, proof that Russia's web of influence, no matter how elaborate, can be exposed and dismantled. But the stakes remain high. As Sandu has self-told EU lawmakers in Strasbourg earlier this month, the Kremlin's goal is clear: to capture Moldova through the ballot box, to use it against Ukraine, and to turn it into a launchpad for hybrid attacks against the European Union. This is not paranoia, it is strategy. Moldova shares a 760-mile border with Ukraine. If Russia were to control Chisinau, it could effectively open a Western front against Kiev, threatening Ukraine from two sides. That, in turn, could alter the course of the war dramatically. And yet Moldova is not in NATO, nor is it in the EU. For now, it is a candidate country, protected more by political goodwill than by hard security guarantees. That makes it both vulnerable and vital. At this point, let's pause. Because this isn't just about Moldova. It raises a bigger question. Can small democracies withstand the full weight of Russia's hybrid warfare? Or will they inevitably crack under pressure? What do you think? Can Moldova's resilience inspire other nations at risk? Or is it only a matter of time before Moscow finds a way back in? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Meanwhile, the international community is watching closely. The BBC and Bloomberg have both published investigations detailing Moscow's multi-pronged strategy. European leaders, including France's Emmanuel Macron, Germany's Friedrich Merz, and Poland's Donald Tusk, have visited Chisinau in recent months, signaling support. But the outcome of the September elections remains uncertain. Polls suggest Sandu's PAS could retain a majority, but perhaps not enough to govern alone. Pro-Russian forces, though weakened, remain entrenched. And Russia, even if thwarted this time, is unlikely to give up. As one Moldovan analyst put it, the Kremlin plays the long game. They don't need to win today. They just need to keep Moldova unstable. Indeed, Russia's influence efforts extend beyond Moldova. Similar patterns of disinformation and covert financing have been uncovered in Georgia, Romania, and even within EU member states. The tactics may evolve, but the intent remains the same. Weaken democratic institutions, exploit societal divisions, and keep Europe distracted. For ordinary Moldovans, however, the consequences are immediate. Rising disinformation fuels distrust in government. Bribery corrodes local communities. And the constant shadow of interference makes every election feel less like a civic exercise and more like a battleground. Yet there is also resilience. Tens of thousands of Moldovans have rallied for EU membership. Civil society groups are actively countering fake news. And Moldova's youth, often the target of Russian recruitment, are increasingly pushing back, choosing Brussels over Moscow. So what comes next? If Moldova can hold its course, secure free and fair elections, and continue reforms, it may one day join the EU by Sandu's target date of 2030. That would represent a historic realignment, a country once considered a Soviet satellite anchoring itself firmly in the European project. But if Russia succeeds, through corruption, disinformation, or violence, the consequences would ripple far beyond Moldova's borders. Ukraine's western flank would be threatened. EU enlargement could stall, and Putin would claim a rare geopolitical victory at a time when his war in Ukraine has drained resources and tarnished his global standing. For now, Moldova has delivered a rare blow to Moscow's shadow empire. The arrests are a reminder that even the most sophisticated networks can be disrupted. But the story isn't over. In fact, it may just be beginning. Because in the great contest between democracy and authoritarianism, Moldova has become the latest test case. A small country with a big choice. A front line where the stakes are nothing less than the future of Europe. And as the ballots are cast, the eyes of the world will be on Chisinau. Moldova may seem small, but in this moment, it carries a burden far larger than its borders. If it can resist, it sends a powerful message that no matter how wide the Kremlin casts its net, democracy still has the power to cut through the shadows. And that, perhaps, is the story Putin did not want told.